Namaskar and welcome to Samvad. Last week, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan they signed a strategic mutual defense agreement. The operative part of the agreement states that any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both. So this agreement generally formalizes what has been decades of informal cooperation, military cooperation between the two countries, including the Saudi financial backing for the illicit Pakistani nuclear weapons program. To discuss this, we have with us somebody who knows this region better than most, Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, former GOC of 15 Corps and member of NDMA. Welcome to Samvad, sir.
Thank you very much, and Jai Hind to all our viewers.
Sir. Sir, the News International newspaper of Pakistan, they carried a headline which is very apt for to start the discussion. Now, the headline, they were discussing the agreement, said, and I quote, Pakistani military might, Saudi financial heft to redraw Gulf security map. Quote, close quote. So, help us understand this statement. Is this some sort of an Article 5 of the NATO?
To first of all directly answer this last part of your question, is it Article 5 of the NATO Charter? The NATO Charter Article 5 has been invoked, to my mind, I think my research tells me only once. And that's during 9/11, after 9/11 and the response to Afghanistan, if you remember, the overall response of the NATO alliance at that time. Otherwise, it's never been invoked. It would have been invoked if it ever happened, if a Soviet invasion had ever taken place in Eastern Europe during the Cold War or anything like that. But it was a huge psychological kind of a tool which helped many of the European nations, which continues to help many of the European nations, the smaller ones particularly. For example, Ukraine. If Ukraine joins NATO, then Article 5, it becomes a part of Article 5. And Article 5 can be invoked for the defense of Ukraine. If Ukraine is attacked, that means the rest of NATO is attacked. So it's a psychological tool which helps the geopolitical, heft of the overall organization and gives a certain degree of confidence to the constituents of that grouping. Now, this is not really that at the moment. To my mind, it's too early for us to conclude that this is a kind of an Article 5. This is a knee-jerk reaction at the moment. More from the angle of Saudi insecurity than anything else. I think Saudi Arabia, since, I would say since the 80s, had decided to move on a slightly different course. And sometime around about the early part of the early decade of this millennium, it charted out a course of coming closer to Israel, improving its overall relationship, that kind of a thing which was going on. I still remember a delegation of Saudis and Israelis coming together to India. They came to Vivekananda International Foundation.
Okay.
And I remember meeting them there, briefing them on various aspects. They wanted to know a lot of things about Indian Islam and things like that. So we briefed them a lot on all these aspects. They were getting very close to each other strategically. A very important kind of an understanding was emerging. Suddenly, all that has disappeared. It seems to have disappeared. And Saudi Arabia is suddenly feeling a little isolated in the manner that the Abraham Accords also, of which Saudi was definitely not a part so far, but would have perhaps been in the due course. But even the Abraham Accords seem to have come apart after the manner in which Israel has been going after Palestine, the Palestinians in Gaza, etc. And the overall US attitude of the current administration towards the Middle East. All this has left not just Saudi Arabia, but a large number of the Gulf countries feeling isolated, feeling insecure. And therefore, the next obvious question should be actually, are all these countries going to sign such similar accords with different countries? Maybe it's yet a little too early for us to conclude that, but Saudi Arabia has definitely shown the way. And this aspect of mutuality, the aspect of the clause of mutuality coming into it is an indicator of essential insecurity, which psychologically Saudi Arabia definitely wants to overcome. It wants to have that confidence of being able to have someone with it, someone with a strong military, someone with a technical capability, financially very weak country, administratively a very weak country, but historically very reliable. The two of them have had a very, very strong relationship for a fairly long time. The last part of this response is that in the middle, there have been some, the relationship has got a little unstuck once in a while. It happened in 2015 in particular, when the Saudi Arabia decided to go after the Houthis. And, they wanted a part of the Pakistani armed forces to join into that coalition. And Raheel Sharif, who later on became the head of the 39-nation Islamic counterterrorism alliance, he himself was the army chief in Pakistan at that time, and he is the one who insisted, put his foot down, and Nawaz Sharif therefore at that time refused. That is the only time when you found suddenly a slight cleavage in the Saudi-Pakistan relationship emerging. That led to a short period of about 4, 5, 6 years maybe, in which Saudi Arabia did not hold Pakistan's hand, particularly from a financial angle. But of late, we have been seeing that Saudi Arabia has been making up for it. It has been underwriting a lot of things for Pakistan. And now this, of course, is the final straw. And I don't think Saudi Arabia could have actually gone to any other nation. It couldn't have gone to Indonesia. It couldn't have gone to some other, or to Egypt or any other country like that. Pakistan, because of the historical aspect of his relationship and the fact that they've got a strong set of armed forces, Saudi Arabia decided to go for it.
So there's something which I'll just digress a bit. Pakistan considers itself to be a net security provider. That is how it is projecting itself to be. But we have seen, sir, during Operation Sindoor, during various confrontations with India, and even with Afghanistan, whatever has been the skirmishes which are going on frequently with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Taliban, all that stuff, it has failed to protect its own people. Now, today it has gone ahead and bombed people, killed 30 people, I believe, airstrikes in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So how does Saudi Arabia see Pakistan as a net security provider, while it is not able to defend its own people? Just the nuclear angle, or maybe something beyond that?
No, the nuclear angle, once again, is a very, very deeply psychological thing, nothing more than that, right? We'll discuss it as we go along. But this aspect on reputation, on military reputation of Pakistan, whatever you may say, the fact that Pakistan was completely routed in 1971 by the Indian army, that 93,000 prisoners were taken, etc. Within the Islamic world, Pakistan's stock as a military power continues to remain very high.
Okay.
This is, everywhere is one of the major troop providers to the United Nations. And in the United Nations, the Pakistani troops are considered to be very professional. So these are issues which are there. What you said is the stark truth. There's no doubt about it. But definitely on a balance, if you look at some of the armies within the Middle East, the Pakistan Armed Forces, the Pakistan Army is definitely of a much higher order. Technically proficient, well-trained, and they have had experience. That is a very important aspect. They've got the experience. So casualties notwithstanding, failures notwithstanding, here is a set of armed forces, powerful, large in number, reasonably adequately sort of equipped. And I think if you look at it on a scale of 1:10 within the Islamic world to which the Saudis would have been forced to go, perhaps Pakistan would be 8 out of 10 compared to any other nation, which would probably stand at 5, 6, or 7.
So you said at the start of your conversation, sir, that this was generally a response to sort of the American withdrawal, which we're seeing from the Middle East. It's withdrawing itself from most of the world. and the Israeli aggression in Gaza, and then Qatar also. They attacked the Hamas in Qatar recently. But the same news report, the News International, which I cited at the start of the program, the same news report states that, I quote again, it is not a response to specific events, unquote. How does this match up, sir?
I would say yes, okay, you can say it's not a specific response or a response to specific events. It's a response to a trend, an emerging trend. And the trend seems to be transcending the Biden to Trump 2 administration, which is very clearly indicating that Israel continues to remain the main force. Of course, the United States will always support Israel, but that the kind of support that the Saudis had, some of the other Gulf countries had, that is no longer forthcoming. And that geopolitically, perhaps in the vision of the United States, in the strategic perspective of the United States, it seems that these Gulf countries have come down a couple of notches in importance. That is the trend which is, I think, probably being observed. What Saudi Arabia is essentially looking for is normality, progress. It is looking how to dilute it's the reputation which it has built up around itself of being a very radical kind of a nation, etc., and is looking for a period beyond 2032 when they feel that energy should not be the moving force of its economy. The moving force of its economy should be trade, it should be technology, and those kind of things. That is where it is moving. For that, it had partnered with the United States. And without the United States, I don't think any nation can really make that kind of a progress as far as technology is concerned. Perhaps it is looking at China now. And its relationship with Pakistan perhaps may assist it to give that outreach towards China. As it is, China is deeply interested to increase its overall footprint in the Middle East, have a better understanding of issues here. It tried to intervene, not really intervene, but facilitate a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, as we saw about 2 or 3 years or 2.5 years ago. That has come a cropper, because at that time also I still remember writing that China's understanding of Islam, understanding of sectarianism, Islam, is absolutely base level, and it cannot sort of undertake this kind of a mission of changing things and facilitating stability and peace here only through summit level interventions. It essentially needs to go to the roots, and from there commence the whole process. That was never appreciated by anyone at that particular time, and obviously those efforts have come a cropper. So, notwithstanding that, the Saudis would probably be looking at China and seeing the manner in which the China and Russia have resisted the United States all along. And it obviously feels that as a part of the overall geopolitical game which is developing in the Middle East, it needs to be more balanced. It need not be necessarily on the US side. It should be seen also to be on the Chinese side.
So we'll stick to the US part, because US has been the security provider to the sort of the whole Middle East, nearly the whole Middle East. Now, there are two possibilities I'm looking at. One is that the US has basically tacitly blessed this partnership, and it wants other countries to take the ownership of their own security, like it has been doing in Europe. And the other part is, the other possibility, I would say, is that it has been blindsided. Now, which of the possibilities you think is or more on the correct side?
I don't think there's a definitive answer here to either of them. There's a bit of both. No doubt, the Americans probably feeling a little slighted by the fact that the Saudis have chosen to I'm sure the Saudis have consulted the United States. Of course, when it comes to anything to do with Pakistan, the Saudis would have consulted the United States. Remember, when it went back to 1980-81, when the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan took place, who were the three leading lights who fought the Soviets? It was the United States, essentially the hardware which came from the United States. It was the finances which came from Saudi Arabia, and it was the intelligence services and the coordinators and facilitators who came from Pakistan. These three together fought that war, the last 8-9 years of the Cold War in Afghanistan.
And the ideology, sir, the ideology, the Wahhabism.
The ideology, of course, came from here, from Saudi Arabia at that particular time, and that is what it finally did manage to spread all over the Islamic world in those particular time. Having said that, I think it has a tacit understanding, a tacit approval of the Americans as far as the Saudi agreement is concerned. On the question of blindsiding, I don't think the United States is really blindsided to this entire issue. They would have realized that their control over Israel at this moment is also partially diluted. Netanyahu is on his own attempting to do things, changing, his strategy is something which is not being entirely influenced by the United States. And particularly after what happened in Qatar, the United States was particularly very, very peeved that they went ahead and carried out those attacks without sort of consulting the United States or agreeing to what the advice of the US was. So I do think that the United States would want to keep Saudi Arabia happy, stable, and doesn't want to be someone who wants to provide it security in any way. I mean, the US presence at the moment is minimal in Saudi, in Qatar, in the Middle East as such overall. And Trump is the last man who wants to add any troops as far as these external deployments are concerned anywhere. So overall, I think it has got the backing of the United States at the moment, primarily looking at the question of also one aspect we must be remembered. This issue doesn't normally emerge in most discussions. I think the United States is also recalling what happened in 2014 when all of a sudden the Middle East was taken over by the ISIS. You see, being surprised by these kind of elements, a sudden upsurge of global terror or something like that, out of the blue it came out. If you are surprised like this, you can't expect the United States to be stepping in to be fighting the ISIS here and there. They didn't do it in 2014-15 either, only except for bits and pieces in northern Syria. There's nowhere else. This is where it expects that these nations should have the capability to be able to secure themselves. And Saudi is a large nation. Saudi is an important nation, not only energy, but also ideology, also the shrines there. Overall, the security of Saudi Arabia is an important aspect for the United States. And this recent bonhomie to put an element of trust in Pakistan to sort of be the sentries in Saudi Arabia on their behalf. That's the way I look at it.
So there is one more possibility which appears to me, that is that now Pakistan could be dragged into Saudi Arabia's those regional the conflicts these people keep on having with Iran. Despite the bonhomie which they had a few months ago, it is still, it's just their status quo sort of a situation exists there. And then the Houthis, who have attacked Saudi Arabia in the past. Now Pakistan could get dragged into that. Then the possibility of yet another conflict, because Operation Sindoor is still going on, it is continuing, of Saudi Arabia somehow getting, I mean, it is all hypothetical as of now, but the reality, the possibility exists of Saudi Arabia getting dragged into the Indian subcontinent. On the other hand, the Saudi vulnerabilities of the Iranian missile attacks, the Houthi, the unconventional Houthi manner of functioning, it has not subsided despite this agreement, whatever this agreement might state. So are both these sides taking a very big risk politically, militarily, and diplomatically?
I do agree that they have jumped into this. and they've jumped into it primarily perhaps because of a Saudi fear more than anything else. After what Saudi has seen happening in Gaza, what they have seen in the overall environment of the Middle East, and the manner, the aggressive, offensive manner in which Israel has treated the rest of the countries, Saudi is obviously concerned. And they needed perhaps a psychological kind of a security for themselves. That's why they've jumped into it. But that does not mean, I sometimes say a lot of things are signed all around the world. But it's not necessary that every word written in agreements and MOUs is actually executed on ground. For example, hypothetically, if you see a situation of like Sindoor emerging here, I cannot even fathom the Saudis sort of coming to the assistance of Pakistan. Psychological backing, yes, in the OIC, Saudi Arabia has very often backed Pakistan. Many times they have not backed Pakistan also. They sort of stood out of the whole thing. So that kind of a thing can be expected. But more than that, to physically, Saudi Arabia doesn't have troops to send. Saudi Arabia has got good equipment, all right. Perhaps something like what was in 1971 or was it in 1965? The allegations, I'm not sure how true it is, of Jordan having provided some fighter aircraft to Pakistan at that particular time. I think it was in 1971, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that kind of a thing is also possible, a token 4 aircraft or 6 aircraft being provided, and the mutuality factor of the agreement between the two having been invoked. That kind of a thing. But Saudi is, I'm sure, very, very mindful of the fact that India is not a descending power. India is very much an power on the ascent. And I think Mohammed bin Salman, the prince, is an absolute realist. He wouldn't have come to India twice at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi if he did not consider India to be a strategically important country for Saudi Arabia. Keeping all this in mind, I don't think the Saudis would in any way interfere. In fact, they would interfere on the positive side, where they would say, okay, we will give the platform and we will provide the facilities. The kind of an intervention between two fighting nations. That kind of an approach would probably be adopted and nothing more than that. That's the way I look at this whole situation. As I say, I reiterate the fact that the mutuality aspect is all primarily for psychological balm more than anything else.
So in the recent past, Pakistan has been pushing this idea of Islamic NATO sort of an alliance and keeping itself in the center of all these projections as the net security provider to the entire Islamic world, so as to say. How viable is this idea, given there's a fractious nature of relationship between the Islamic nations among themselves? So how viable do you see is this idea as? And is the call for unity arising out of military threats stronger than these differences between these Islamic nations?
57 nations form up the OIC. And 39 nations, the last count I did, maybe is, I think, gone up to 40 or 41. Nations form the counter-terrorism force, which Saudi Arabia set up in 2015.
Is it functional, sir? Is it functional, that force?
It is, well, theoretically it is functional. Okay. Theoretically it is functional. Rahil Sharif was there till recently, I do remember. I'm not sure whether he has gone back, but he was there for the better part of the last many years, right? He's the one who set up this entire force. Part of that force was used to fight in South Yemen and against the Houthis. Pakistan did not join it. Pakistan did not join the fight against the Houthis, but it joined the 39-nation coalition. Malaysia joined it. Indonesia did also join it. So a couple of nations did, a large number of nations did join it. But an occasion has not come for that 39-nation force to really take on intense counter-terror operations anywhere in the world. It's been more on paper than anything else, right? So this harebrained idea of a Islamic NATO, it has been it was the brainchild, of course, for a long time. It is Pakistan which has always perceived that it is the virtual flag bearer of Islam. It feels that that's one of the major reasons why it does not want to see itself as a part of South Asia. Most of the time, it looks westwards and considers itself as a part of the Middle East, a part of Arabia, a part of the Arabian desert, or whatever you want to call it. Ethnically, they are South Asian, but they like to consider themselves more Middle East. They felt that their destiny lay in that, closer to the shrines, closer to where Islam thrives, and that kind of sentiments which were expressed from time to time. The coming of the Islamic bomb was also something which gave Pakistan a huge psychological boost and helped them sort of be able to speak down to a lot of Islamic nations to think that we are the big brothers, and they are a populous country, over 200 million. So obviously everyone started looking up to them. But it is their economy, it is their economic condition, it is their administrative weakness overall, their internal security divisiveness, the kind of sectarian issues which are there at any one time. All this works against them. So Pakistan itself, this whole business of trying to bring about this NATO organization, or Islamic NATO, under its leadership, to my mind, is a non-starter. Now, who else can do it, therefore? Is there any other nation? It can happen that the Saudis take it on, and the Saudis bankroll it, and they want Pakistan then to undertake the leadership side of it, the organizational side of it, based on their military experience. That may, at this stage, may be a little far-fetched, because I think we are just seeing the beginnings of this kind of a understanding between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Come 6 months down, if the situation does not improve, and you find Israel still on the rampage all over the Middle East, then maybe you may expect that this idea may start taking birth a little faster. I do expect that this is not going to die out. The sentiments are definitely going to be there, and they will progress once we see things happening on the geopolitical front in the Middle East.
So one final question. The Indian response, or how should India look at the whole agreement per se? Now, I was reading this. There's Al-Shibabi. He's an analyst close to the Saudi royal family. Because the Saudi royal family hardly speaks in public. So he stated that India will understand the security needs of Saudi Arabia. The Indian response till now has been very cautious, and it has said that strategic partnerships will keep in mind, it has hoped that the strategic partnership will keep in mind mutual interests and sensitivities. Now, there are reports that India knew that this was in the pipeline. India was informed by the Saudis that it was in the pipeline. Now, given the status, we already talked about Operation Sindoor, it is still continuing. How should, number one, sir, India view this agreement? Have the Indian concerns about energy security, the huge diaspora, and standing in the Islamic world gone up a notch further? The Indian concerns, they should be concerned, they are concerned about it. Because, sir, I'll give you an example. Maybe, sir, it's all hypothetical, in a conflict, Saudi does not join in directly, but it can do a whole lot of things other than joining in militarily. So how do you view the Indian concerns?
I think the way the government of India has responded initially is just the way that it should respond. And it is obviously reflective of this fact that it has been consulted. And I think the Saudis have made it very clear that none of this has any angle to it which is targeting India, looking at India with a negative eye. This has been, I think, amply made clear. And that should give us a degree of assurance that should tomorrow something happen on the South Asian front, on the India-Pakistan front, the Saudis, for one, are definitely not going to get themselves involved. Having said that, we must continue to nurture this relationship. This is a very, very strong relationship, the India-Saudi Arabia relationship. Now, the largest diaspora in the Middle East is in Saudi Arabia. At one time, it used to be in the UAE. It is in Saudi Arabia. I think, first of all, a lot of guidelines need to be laid down for the diaspora. After all, they are all Indian citizens. They are not citizens of Saudi Arabia or citizens of the UAE, etc. Proper guidelines must be laid for everyone who is working outside and carrying an Indian passport, primarily to dwell upon their minds that they need to support, be positive towards the local population, towards the local government that they are serving there. After all, their rosy roti is coming out from there. And this needs to be told to people that they must treat that country, their host country, as a very important entity in their lives. This needs a little bit of a psychological thing with the backing of the government of India. Perhaps the people will feel a little more confident to be able to exude that kind of outgoing kind of an approach towards their host nations. Not that Indians are in any way adventurous about going anti that nation in which they are serving, in which they are living, etc. But just as a guideline, and the guideline itself will project a lot of positivity to the countries, the Gulf countries in particular. Besides that, the manner in which the Modi government worked this out from 2015 in particular, and I quote 2018 as the model year. That's the year when diplomacy with the Middle East really took off. I recall that 26th of January, we had the 10 ASEAN leaders here who came on as the chief guests of the Republic Day. Thereafter, Mr. Modi, I think it was thereafter, Benjamin Netanyahu came here visiting on the 5th of February. Immediately after that visit, within a week, Prime Minister Nehru was in Jordan. From there, he flew to Palestine. He went to the Palestinian Authority and flew back to Jordan, came to the UAE. I think there was some ceremony concerning the temple in Abu Dhabi, and then came back. And immediately you found the Jordanian king coming here. And then you found the Iranian president coming here. In 6 weeks, I had never, ever witnessed such intense diplomacy as the manner in which we noticed in February, March of 2018. The dividends of that really emerged in a short time, and you found the relationship between India and the Middle East, particularly the Gulf, becoming stronger and stronger. That is holding us in very good stead today. And despite Pakistan's attempts to do anything against it, that is not diluting in any way. We need to nurture this and we need to build up on this to make sure with them that, see, we may have a strong relationship with Israel, right? But we've also got similar bilateral kind of things happening, multilateral things happening in other parts of the world. We are friends with the United States. We are friends with the Russians. We are also friends with the Chinese as far as certain issues are concerned. Trade and economics and things like that. So we can all live in this world. You need not have a question of a mutually exclusive kind of relationships from each other. This is a typical Indian diplomatic approach. This is something which must be spoken to from time to time to the Middle Eastern countries. I think with all this and with this background which Mr. Modi has built up over a period of the last 10 years or so, I think our relationship with the Middle Eastern countries, and particularly the Gulf countries, will endure this very, very challenging period through which we are passing at the moment.
I agree totally, sir, that relationships need to be nurtured, and one should not take any relationship for granted. We need to look beyond binaries, which the government is obviously doing, and look for multi-alignment for building relationships. So thank you so much, sir. It has been a thoroughly informative and knowledgeable session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much once again, and we hope to have one more such discussion in the near future.
Thank
Jai
you,
Hind.
sir. Jai Hind, sir.